Hey, just loading up the old scripperoo. So I just finished an exam, pharmacology and pathology of infectious diseases exam. Saks lang. Honestly, could have done better, but then long weekend, wanted to relax. So, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Marco, currently a second year medical student of Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health. In this hopefully short video, so I don't have to edit super long videos, I want to talk about how I memorized things in college and in med school. So basically the whole flow of this video is going to be general tips on how I did it and then specific things that I do. Some of them may be generic because, people have been recommending it, but these are just stuff that I personally have used, and hopefully I can give you guys examples on how to use it. So let's start off with general tips. First is to try to understand the topic before memorizing it. I think it's very counterintuitive trying to memorize something that you don't understand. This is a point I've been trying to make since I've been making Anki cards. It's really counterproductive making flashcards for things that I don't understand, so it really makes it difficult to commit to memory. For example, if you want to try to memorize the glycolytic pathway, in my experience, it's very hard to memorize the whole pathway if I try to memorize it step by step. So the whole big picture versus the details first is a really good way to go. The second general tip is try to do a lot of repetition. This can be obvious to some, but to me, it wasn't as obvious before, I guess. I won't tell you to use Anki because personally that's just what works for me. It can be up to you. It can be rereading, it can be using flashcards, it can be watching lecture videos, anything. As long as you repeat it over and over again to refresh your memory, that is perfectly fine. Not sure if you should do it every day. There is something called spaced repetition where you leave out space every now and then before you reread it. So for example, in my Anki cards, I review it today, tomorrow, in 3 days, in 6 days. You spread it out as you go through it. Studying every day doesn't really hurt, but it really depends on your workload. So the main point is you try to repeat it as much as you can before the exam. Third is trying to use different study styles. I think in my previous study routine video, you noticed that I read the book, make Anki cards, read notes, watch lecture videos, watch third-party videos. I try to take advantage of every resource that I have because I would want to receive that information through different means. And the cool thing is each of those resources would supplement each other. So for example, if I read something from a book and I don't really get it because it is from a very wordy paragraph, I just watch a video about it and then everything makes sense because they use images. Same goes for the opposite. If you watch a video and it's too condensed, it's too simple, and you want to emphasize or elaborate more, I go to the book. But the last thing on the general list is to honestly know your own study style. I think one thing that people really miss, studies have shown active recall is the best, spaced repetition is the best, but honestly, if it doesn't work for you, what's the point of it all? For me, this is the reason why I don't recommend Anki as much. It's worth a try, of course, but if it doesn't work, why force it? So try to find something that works. I'll try to link a study style or a study method quiz down below. Maybe you'll learn more about yourself if you use that quiz. So check that out. So now that I got the general stuff out of the way, maybe we can move on to more specific tips that I try myself. The first thing I want to talk about is saying words out to yourself or reading it out loud to yourself. For me, sometimes reading words quietly makes it really hard to retain it. So what I do is I slow it down and I take it word for word. I try to break it down into phrases, try to make those phrases make sense before I try to make sense of the whole sentence. So the second tip is mnemonics are really good. I did not take advantage of mnemonics back in first year. I was too proud to use mnemonics, but then now that I have a lot of drugs to study, mnemonics really come in handy. But I think that mnemonics are only useful and helpful as long as you memorize both what the mnemonic is for and what the mnemonic actually means. Not even the funny meaning, the actual meaning. Until today, I still remember my mnemonic for what are the target tissues for chikungunya viral replication. It's Michael Jackson loves eating sushi with Marco. That's the PG version. The meaning is basically muscles, joints. Michael Jackson loves muscle, joints, liver, spleen, meninges of neonates. And honestly, mnemonics, I think they don't really have to form like a big sentence. You can if you want to, but sometimes you can just opt to group up certain letters. For example, bacteria that are included in SSI etiology, surgical site infection etiology. Now, I just grouped up the letters of AE, then SG, then CC. So that's anaerobic bacteria, enterics, Staphylococcus aureus, group A streptococcus, cons, Clostridium infections. So instead of making a whole sentence, because I can't even absorb that anymore, I just grouped up AE, SG, CC. That's already perfectly fine. Third thing I want to recommend is mental images. It's a lot like if you use Sketchy Farm or Sketchy Micro or any of the sketchy things. It's a really good way of memorizing things that don't work with mnemonics for some reason. So I've tried to use this for 3 species. I think my example for this is what are the species that cause the common form of leishmaniasis. I think this is cutaneous leishmaniasis. Don't quote me on that. And the 3 species are L. tropica, L. infantum, and L. major. For some reason, I can't remember my mnemonic TIM, as in it's not hitting. So what I did was just try to come up with a mental image of a soldier, a high-ranking soldier, carrying a baby under a palm tree. Or in Boracay, pwede rin. So it pretty much hits the major, infantum, and tropica. And for some reason, that one was the one that stick. So mental images also work. Next one is to actually memorize patterns. So when it comes to big tables or big algorithms, I think it's very hard to memorize each step sometimes. So what I do is I just memorize the patterns or one choice that is just very off. So, hey guys, Editor Marco here. I think I found a better example for the memorizing patterns part of the video. Let me just pull it up real quick. So in this picture, you'll see the question is what serotypes are classified under each genera of parainfluenza virus. Based on the lecture, parainfluenza virus had 5 serotypes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4A, and 4B. And then each genera had its own serotypes underneath it. So instead of just specifically memorizing respirovirus type 1, type 3, rubella virus has type 2, 4A, 4B. Honestly, I just knew that there were 5 serotypes from 1 to 4B. And then all I just memorized were that respirovirus had the odd number ones and rubella virus had the even number ones. And after that, everything was just smooth sailing. You do, after a while, you do start to memorize like the specific numbers themselves, but at the start, just to commit it to memory, I memorized the patterns first before memorizing 1, 3, 2, 4, 8, 2, 4B. Something like that. Hopefully that was as clear as it could be. See you guys. I also have this really weird pattern that I use. So for example, if the question is what ribosomal subunit do macrolides inhibit, it's either 50S or 30S. And the way I remember it is the 3 of the 30S, if you flip it, it's an M. So it's not the M. So it's not 3 because it forms the M. So it's a 50S. It's a really weird pattern, but honestly, it works. I still remember it, as in I easily answer the Anki card as long as I see macrolide, I know that it's a 50S ready. The next thing I want to recommend is to try to make tables. Now this works especially if you have a lot of information that have a lot of similar features that you can compare. Hopefully my TG mate allows me to use this table. Hey guys, so this is what I was talking about specifically when making tables. Just a brief disclaimer, this isn't mine. I didn't make this. This is actually made by a TG mate of mine. Thank you so much for letting me use this as an example. So this is a really good example. I think this is for pharmacology of infectious diseases. Our exam just yesterday played. This is a really good way of differentiating information that have similar features or maybe groups of information. So for example, here we have anti-herpes agents. We got cytomegalovirus agents, and then we got anti-influenza. Because drugs are usually described with the same features, specifically mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, indications, and adverse effects, you can use those specific information based on what the goals or what the objectives or the lecture are, and you base the tables around that. So for us, these are part of the objective. So we were tasked to learn about the mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, indications, adverse effects. Those are the columns that we often use. and then you separate it by based on whatever you're learning. So for us, there are different drugs for herpes, CMV. What else is here? Influenza. There's a lot of tables here actually. So there's also for antiretrovirals, specific groups of antiretrovirals. So NRTIs, NNRTIs, PIs, and all of those similar things. But what holds them together is the fact that all of them need MOA, pharmacokinetics, indication, adverse effects. And this works well because you group it together and then you separate it per table. So for example, acyclovir, you see the MOA here, you see the pharmacokinetics here, you see everything here, and everything is lined up and summarized in very short statements. I think the best way to do this, I only tried making one for myself. Honestly, I still use Anki as my main mode of learning, but I tried making a table, and the really best way to take advantage of it is to keep it short and keep it to a minimum. I want to say it's for short lines that would remind you of the idea, not the whole paragraph in the book, maybe. Last tip is to try to test yourself. If you have previous quizzes or if you have review questions from upper batchman or something, you can use that to test if you actually remember it, and then you can use what you miss as a cue to see which ones you find a hard time answering, and then you focus your time on those. It's pretty much the same strategy I used in NMAT, where I did practice exams to see where I lack, and then I focused my energy on those specific subjects. Pretty much the same thing, pretty straightforward. Test yourself as much as you can. Okay, so last actually, before I forget, I actually got this from Billy because I asked her what are her tips on how to memorize stuff, because she is 1 year higher than me, and she said try to only memorize high yield information. There's so much to memorize, so much to learn, that trying to remember every single detail, small detail, is going to be counterproductive because it will push out other information that you're trying to remember. So her tip was figure out which ones are high yield based on the lecturer's objectives and just memorize those. It's a really good skill to have if you can differentiate nice to know information with need to know information. So try to develop that if you can. I don't have tips for that because I still find it difficult because I am the type to really memorize everything. So as much as possible, try to base it off of the objectives of the lecturer, and then you'll be all set. One example I can think of is one lecture we had about, I want to say antiprotozoals, or I think antiparasitic. The objective didn't really specify that we have to remember the dosages of the drugs. So I didn't memorize any dosage at all. As in, I only focused on adverse effects, treatment, and use, and pretty much did pretty okay with that part. Alright, that pretty much ends this video. Those are all of my tips on how to memorize things, how to remember things. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, hopefully you like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any more contributions, actually, if you want to help out other people, you can always comment down below. If you think I missed something, comment it down below still. If you like this video, just usual, if you want to support the channel, you can always subscribe there in the circle in the middle. If you want to watch more videos, hopefully they're my videos. Up there and down there is the way to go. Yeah. See you guys in the next video. Peace.